Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. What was your favourite Warhammer Fantasy starter set?
Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Counter-Attack Bases. They stock a wide range of counters, gaming aids and movement trays for multiple game systems, and offer custom items to suit your club, your event, or even your podcast or YouTube channel. Check out the link in the video description.
News continues to be a little bit slow when it comes to Warhammer the Old World. I'm still not worried about that. If you want to hear my thoughts on it, I did make a video a few weeks ago. Unfortunately, the way Games Workshop tends to operate with multiple different groups working on different games, that Warhammer the Old World is very much a smaller part of the business. Hopefully that's changing as the game gets more and more popular, but it's no surprise to anyone who's been around Games Workshop for a number of years that when there's a new Warhammer 40k edition on the horizon, it sucks up all of the oxygen, and I'm pretty sure that that is the most simple reason why we haven't seen any news for Warhammer the Old World in a little while. It was disappointing at the recent reveal when we didn't get any news, and quite often I think it's, if they can't show something that's going to be available to buy within sort of 3 to 4 months, then they don't show it at all, even though there's clearly going to be stuff going on in the background. So hopefully there will be a reveal of something soon. I'm sure there will. We may have to wait till 40k is released. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about today. I was pondering away while painting today, thinking about my favourite starter set for Warhammer Fantasy. And in this video I'm going to cover all 9 editions, and I mean 9 editions with Warhammer the Old World being the 9th edition, and discuss what I think is my favourite starter set. I also want to hear about what your favourite starter set is in the comments over the years, and also what you'd like to see for a starter set for Warhammer the Old World. Now, I'm going to have to skip over the first 3 editions pretty quickly because they weren't standard starter sets per se. There were no miniatures in the box, but I do want to cover them off very, very briefly just for completion's sake. 1983 saw the launch of the first edition box set, and it was a tiny little box called Warhammer the Mass Combat Fantasy Role-Playing Game, and inside there were 3 rule books or publications with tabletop battles, 1 for magic and 1 for characters. And a little bit later on there was a Forces of Fantasy box with all the army lists you'd need to play the game. In 1985, 2nd edition saw a similar affair, a box with books inside, 3 again, setting out the rules that you needed to play the game. There was combat, battle magic and the battle bestiary. I'm deliberately avoiding any detail here or turning this into a history video. If you want to go and find out more about the history of Warhammer and the editions, please go and check out my good friend Jordan Sorcery's channel. I'll pop a link into his channel here. He's done loads of videos on the history of Warhammer if you want to find out all the info about how these early editions came about. 1987 saw the arrival of 3rd edition. Still no starter set with miniatures, and not even a box this time. All the rules you needed to play, aside from army lists, came in this one single hardback tome to start with, and the modern game really started to be born here. I absolutely love this book. This is where I started in the game, and I still love the beautiful nostalgia buzz I get looking back through the pages now. And if you forgive a small addendum to the regular edition coverage, I picked up this Warhammer Fantasy Regiments box to go with my 3rd edition set, and this had 60 miniatures in, 10 Dark Elves, 10 Dwarves, Skaven, 10 Orcs, Goblins and 10 regular Wood Elves as well. And I absolutely love this set in white plastic. It was awful to paint, but again, so much nostalgia. So this book and this box combined was the closest you could get to a starter set back in 3rd edition. 1992 saw, in my opinion, the birth of modern day Warhammer Fantasy. We saw the first big game box set with lots and lots of miniatures in. 40k at this stage was still on Rogue Trader just as a book. Their own starter set was to follow after the success of this one, and I bought this set as a young teen and absolutely loved it, and this is very much a core memory as well, along with 3rd edition for me, and with that goes a lot of nostalgia, but I still think the set was fantastic and loads of value in there to get you playing the game. The big box for me at the time felt different as well. It felt a lot brighter. We were moving into what is now called the red era. It felt a lot different. It still felt like Warhammer, but they were definitely appealing to a younger market. This was available at Argos if you were from the UK, and there are lots of really cool things inside. The books were a bit like the earlier editions, smaller rule book, smaller battle, beastry, all separated, some quick play sheets, all of the stuff that we find now a lot more often in their games. And there were also some really cool things like the flamer templates and the blast templates in card, rather than having to cut them out of the back of the book. And again, I love looking back through these books and reminiscing, maybe not quite in the same way as I did with that 3rd edition book, and no use for these at all as fun as they were at the time. You imagine playing games now with these to stand in as your war machines, as your characters. And I'm not sure whether it was just because it was my first proper starter set, or whether because there was a whopping 104 miniatures, I think, in it. Fantastic value, but I think he goes down as one of the best starter sets that I can remember from Games Workshop, in terms of it being a really rounded force and game to play, and a great way to get people started. And in 1996, 5th edition came along, and it was very much an evolution to what we saw for 4th edition a few years before. The books were a little bit more full colour, a little bit thicker as well, but it definitely kept the format of the big starter set. Another epic cover on the front of the big box, and then of course inside a battle book, a rule book, a painting guide, a getting started with card buildings, again a roster pad, magic item cards, so there are extra things in there, rage rulers. And was this the first time we saw the whippy sticks? Let me know in the comments below. Play sheets, and then lots and lots of miniatures yet again. 12 Bretonnian knights, 24 Bretonnian bowmen, 32 lizard skinks, and 20 lizard saurus. Whether 4th or 5th edition was your favourite would be very much down to maybe where you started or what armies you preferred at the time. I've got a lot of nostalgia, as I've already said, for 4th edition, because it was a period when I was very much getting new into the game. In 5th edition, I was drifting away and going to university and pretending I wasn't a nerd. So I looked at the game in a different way back then. But since then, I've had plenty of the Bretonnians from that era, painted lots, and even a whole army of the skinks and saurus. And those models definitely were showing their age back 15 years ago when I last painted them, so God knows what they were like back in 1996. But again, a really jam-packed box, which is just a fantastic start to Warhammer Fantasy. Now, 6th edition is the trendy edition. It's the edition written by Thomas Pirinen, and many people regard this as the peak of Warhammer Fantasy, both based around the rules, but also based around the grim, dark nature of the lore that was going at that point. And an awful lot of that, I completely agree with it. It was a really, really cool time. And again, one that I missed the beginning of, because I was still pretending I wasn't a nerd for a little while then. And we were back to the big, thick, heavy rulebook, and a big, heavy rulebook actually in the starter set for the first time. After this, and later editions, you will see, for a little while we move on to those smaller handy books, and the big editions were only available to purchase separately. This, of course, was another beautiful big box edition with lovely cover art, and it'd be really fun to let me know also in the comments below what your favourite box cover art for these editions was as well. Slightly fewer miniatures in this set. 38 Empire soldiers, a mix between handgunners and some really, really cool spearmen, which are really sought after these days. I know I'd love to get hold of some again, having sold mine off. An Empire Great Cannon and an Empire General, so it's nice to see some characters in these boxes as well that weren't on card. One Orc War Boss, 35 Orc Warriors, and an Orc War Chariot. There's a ruin building made out of card but with plastic parts as well, and then all the usual plastic templates and dice and range rulers, whippy sticks of course, and that 288 page big rulebook. I was going to say, and I guess I'm still saying it, moving into more modern Warhammer Fantasy Battle now, as we jump from 2000 up to 2006 and the launch of 7th edition. Of course, that was 20 years ago, and I'm showing my age. But it was an edition that I returned to the game with, returned to hobbying with after quite a long break, and it also has a big place in my heart because of that. But the game feels fairly modern, and in many ways it's quite similar to the way we play Warhammer the Old World today. Much like 6th edition, there was a big hardback rulebook, which I have here, but in the box, which is what we're talking about today, in that starter set, there was a small A5 booklet, and they became very popular for taking to clubs and going to events, and I'd really love to see something like that in the future, but we won't go down that route. Battle for Skull Pass was the starter set, and was that the first time they'd named the starter set? Maybe they had been for Warhammer 40,000. In fact, I'm sure they probably had by that point. Again, answers in the comments below. But this time we had dwarves facing off against night goblins. Back to there being over 100 miniatures. There were 12 dwarf warriors, there was 10 dwarf thunderers and dwarf miners and a thane and a dragon slayer and a cannon and crew, all slightly more basic sculpts than the ones that were available from their army set at the time, so like a budget version of the regular miniatures. Similar for the night goblins, though, I feel the dwarf sculpts suffered a little bit more from that slightly basic version. There were 14 night goblin spearmen, there were 20 night goblin archers, there was a goblin spider riders, 10 of them in the set, a goblin big boss and a goblin shaman as well, and a quite funky, slightly small looking troll, but it was a really cool set. A little bit less in the box, maybe, in terms of extra paraphernalia. You still get your dice and your templates and your whippy sticks. Again, a starter guide with your painting things in there and that small rule book. But again, slightly more modern Games Workshop in its styling. But I still think this was a really good set. And the miniatures, as much as I think the dwarves are maybe not quite as good as they could have been, the goblins were fantastic, save the troll maybe. And I think it was a really good, fun set. 2010, of course, saw the launch of 8th edition and the last for some time, and there was a massive book, and this is still beautiful, but again, we're not here to talk about those books because that wasn't in the starter set. But what we did have is what I think is probably the best starter set to date, and I'll explain why in my conclusions at the end, but it was, again, jam-packed with beautiful miniatures. So aside from the full colour getting started booklet and the 200-page A5 rulebook, which again, a bit like the 7th edition, was very sought after and really useful, dice and templates and those whippy sticks, yet again there were some beautiful armies included in the box. The High Elves had a prince on griffin, they had a mage on foot, they had some Lothran Sea Guard, which are the same ones we have now in Warhammer, the Old World, and they had some Swordmasters of Hoeth as well, and then 5 Illyrian Reavers, which are really nice sculpts that we all thought would return, but didn't. We got the brand new sculpts in Warhammer, the Old World. And then for the Skaven, there was a Warlord, a Warlock Engineer, 40 Clan Rats, a Master Moulder, 2 Rat Ogres, which are again really nice sculpts that stand out quite well today, a Warp Fire Thrower, and a Poisoned Wind Mortar. As I've already said, many of those miniatures you will find on tables all around the world today for people playing Warhammer, the Old World. The Swordmasters and the Sea Guard are the current sculpts, and they came back repackaged. The Prince and the Mage didn't, but there's still plenty of them around on the scene at the moment. People are picking them up from eBay. Sadly, Skaven haven't returned, obviously because they are still a legacy army at this stage. Hopefully when they return, and I think it's a when they return, some of these sculpts will come back because they are very cool and stand up pretty well to this date. And that brings us on to Warhammer the Old World. Currently there are no starter sets in stock, and there's a lot of rumours about something new coming along, and I hope there is. And there wasn't a standard starter set either. There were 2 starter sets, and essentially they were starter armies of Bretonnians or Tomb Kings, which is all we got to start with the full rulebook inside. So these aren't bad sets per se, but they're not the traditional 2-player starter set that a lot of people really like. Nevertheless, I think they were pretty good and have lots of the things that we recognise from previous editions. A big whopping full hardback book in there, the quick play guides, the whippy sticks again, the templates in a slightly different colour, and the dice that you need to play the game. And the Bretonnian set was great. We had a brand new character in that launch box, loads and loads of the knights and men-at-arms returning, including some Pegasus knights, which turned out to be really quite broken in the game, but all is fun. And for the Tomb Kings, there was the stunning centerpiece of the dragon as well, a bone dragon. Absolutely amazing miniature, and it was lovely to see in that launch set. The rest were all older miniatures as well, and quite old, so lots of skeletons that could be built as swordmen or bowmen. There was chariots in there, and then there were also some skeleton horsemen as well. Both of those sets offered fantastic value, and if you were starting the game and wanted your own copy of the rulebook and gave you a starter army, I think they were great for that as well. There was always the problem of a two-player starter, that you'd either paint up both armies or sell off one half. I don't know which is better. I like a two-player starter just for that nostalgia feel of having it all in one box, but for many people, buying an army in a box with the rulebook included is a pretty cool way of doing things as well. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I think I'd prefer a two-player starter, even though the army in a box with the rulebook seems to be a really nice place to start if it's available for the army that you want to play, which obviously wasn't the case at the launch of Warhammer the Old World, with only 2 armies available. So that's the end of my little rundown of all of those editions, and like I said, I'm really interested to hear what you think was the best starter set. For me, I think it's the 8th edition Island of Blood starter set, because the quality of miniatures at that time were just fantastic. Those Swordsmen of Hoeth and those Seaguard are really, really beautiful miniatures, and I just painted an awful lot for a commission, and I think they still stand up really well today. And I've got a lot of fond memories of the Skaven as well, and I think they will hold up enough. As much as miniature design has moved on, I think they were really, really nice. I also really liked the 4th edition set because it was the first starter set, and the sheer amount of miniatures in that box was incredibly exciting for me at that time, and I just loved it. I loved the fact that the game was presented in a new way, made a lot more accessible, and it really was for me the birth of the modern Warhammer game that we see today. So remember, we're grading the starter sets rather than your favourite set of edition rules. I'm not trying to do that here. It's as a package. Forget the rules side of it. Imagine your favourite edition of the rules as included, and what do you prefer from an aesthetic point of view and for what was inside that starter set. And aside from all the many side quest questions that I've thrown at you throughout this video, the other main one I had was, what would you like to see in a 2-player starter set for Warhammer the Old World if they were to launch it for this edition now, or maybe even to launch the next edition? There's lots of rumours around with the Tomb King Wood Elf thing. I still scratch my head at that and trying to work out what the narrative will be behind that. It probably wouldn't be the 2 armies that I would have selected, but I'm sure that it will be fine if that's what they go with, and the rumour keeps coming back around all the time, so maybe there is some truth in it. I think Bretonnia and Orcs would be really cool, telling a story that's not been told yet in Warhammer the Old World. There's a narrative already that King Llewellyn is fighting Orcs at that period, so that's a story that we've not been told in an Arcane Journal yet. But again, that would be returning to Bretonnians as part of a starter set, and we've already had those, and I guess we've already had Tomb Kings as well, so that would be a shame in some ways if that does turn out to be the next starter set. As a biased Empire Hume fan, I would love the idea of a revamped Empire army, maybe with new sculpts for knights or something like that, fighting off against some chaos, which is the sort of the main narrative at the moment. So a mounted Empire army, updating all of the knights, fighting some new Chaos Warriors, maybe if they were going to do a new sculpt for those, and updating those as well so they're in line with the new Marauders. That would be really cool. It would fit in with the narratives. If I was in charge and I was picking a 2nd edition starter, I'd definitely be tempted to try something like that. I don't think that will happen at all, by the way, and I don't know anything about what might come in the future. I'd be really surprised if something like that happened. Another cool thing to do would be to see the new Kislev models, which surely must be on their way at some point in the future. So those being in a starter set, maybe up against some chaos again, would be really, really cool, and a nice way to get 2 new sets of sculpt, maybe in a starter set. Anyway, lots of fun ideas. I'm sure there are some other really cool ones as well, and I really love to see in the comments what they are. And that's it. I will take up your time no longer. I hope you enjoyed this fun and frivolous bit of chatter around nostalgia and what we might see in the future for Warhammer the Old World. Like I said at the top of the video, I'm not too worried. Of course, I'm frustrated like everyone else that we haven't had any news. I don't think it's because there's any issues with the game whatsoever. I just think it's the way Games Workshop does what they do, and some games get all of the oxygen and it's 40k time, and maybe at points the marketing side of things forget that there are other game systems out there that would just like a little snippet to keep them happy rather than waiting a long time for any news whatsoever. But I'm also, they've done this before, this isn't new, and the game has done so well that I think when it does come back, once 40k is out of the way, I'm sure it will come back with a bang. So if you have enjoyed the video, answer some of the questions below, drop a comment. That really, really helps the video be seen by other people and therefore helps me out. Give the video a like as well. If you like what I do on the channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. It starts from £1 for just a basic level of support, and there's lots of other tiers on there as well to meet your different needs. If you are new to the channel, you've found this video for the first time, there's lots of other old world content on there, and some of it's like this, but even more of it's hobby related, painting, miniatures, doing tutorials, that kind of stuff. So do go and check it out. Also check out the channel sponsor Counterattack Bases, who make loads of gaming aids, including for Warhammer the Old World. But thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.